You did not arrive here by chance. Something in your spirit recognized this moment before your mind caught up. There is a quiet seriousness in the air, a sense that life is about to rearrange itself not violently, not chaotically, but deliberately. Divine provision is being released, and you are being asked to prepare for a shift that will not look like fantasy but will feel unmistakably real. For a long time, you have lived in between effort and outcome. You showed up consistently, even when motivation disappeared. At work, you carried responsibility without title. In finances, you learned how to stretch what others would have given up on. In your family, you became the strong one, the listener, the problem solver, the stabilizer. And yet, there were moments when you quietly asked yourself, how long can I keep doing this? That question was not weakness. It was the signal that a new season was approaching. Provision does not always arrive as excess. Often, it first arrives as clarity. Suddenly, you begin to see what no longer fits. You feel resistance toward patterns you once tolerated. Conversations change, priorities shift. You may notice you are less willing to compromise your peace just to keep things familiar. This is preparation. God rarely pours new provision into old containers that cannot sustain it. Think of a simple, everyday situation. You are checking your bank account, not in panic, but with careful awareness. The numbers are not where you want them to be, yet you feel a surprising calm. Or you are at work, and instead of chasing approval, you focus on excellence without resentment. Or at home, you decide to rest instead of overextending yourself to please everyone. These small decisions are evidence that something inside you is aligning with trust instead of fear. Provision moves towards stability, not chaos. That is why this season may feel slower than you expected. God is not delaying you. He is anchoring you. If provision came before this inner grounding, it would only amplify anxiety. But when it comes now, it will settle into your life instead of disrupting it. There is also something else happening. You are being shifted from survival thinking into stewardship thinking. Survival asks, how do I get through this? Stewardship asks, how do I manage what I am about to receive? This shift is subtle, but powerful. You begin to think long-term. You stop making decisions out of fear of loss. You start asking better questions about purpose, sustainability, and impact. You might still face pressure. Bills still exist. Deadlines still matter. Family expectations still pull at you. But notice this pressure no longer defines you. It no longer speaks louder than hope. You are learning that provision is not only about money or opportunity. It is about timing, placement, and readiness. Heaven speaks clearly through the words in Deuteronomy, chapter 8, verse 18. But remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the ability to produce wealth, and so confirms His covenant. This verse does not say wealth falls randomly. It says ability is given. Skill, wisdom, discernment, endurance, these are forms of provision already active in your life. What you are waiting for externally has already been forming internally. You are not behind. You are being equipped. Consider your current responsibilities. They are not punishment. They are practice. The way you handle limited resources now is shaping how you will manage increase later. The way you speak under stress is training you for leadership under visibility. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is accidental. Now let me ask you directly, if provision arrived tomorrow, would your habits support it or sabotage it? This question is not meant to accuse you. It is meant to awaken you. Because God does not only bless you with things, He blesses you with capacity. And capacity is what you are growing into right now. Hope is becoming practical in your life. It looks like better boundaries and smarter choices, clearer priorities. It looks like peace returning before circumstances change. This is how you know the shift has already started. If this message resonates, take a moment to like and share it with someone who is quietly carrying a lot. Subscribe so you stay connected to what is unfolding, and as a simple act of alignment, comment 4 below, marking stability, foundation, and provision coming into order. The pressure you endured was not random, and it was not excessive by mistake. It was measured, it was allowed, and it was shaping you in ways you could not see while you were inside it. This section is not about glorifying pain, but about revealing purpose. You were not being punished, you were being prepared. There were seasons when life felt unusually heavy, not dramatic enough for others to notice, but constant enough to exhaust you. At work, expectations increased while support stayed the same. You were trusted with more responsibility but given little authority. In finances, you learned how to delay your own desires to keep everything else afloat. In family matters, you became the emotional anchor, even when no one asked if you were tired. These pressures pressed against your limits, but they also expanded them. Pressure reveals where strength truly lives. When everything is easy, character stays hidden. But when timelines stretch, when prayers seem unanswered, when effort feels unseen, that is when endurance is either formed or fractured. You did not fracture. You adapted. You learned restraint. You learned patience. You learned how to keep moving forward without applause. These are not small things. These are rare qualities. Think about a real-life moment. Maybe you were passed over for an opportunity you knew you deserved. You felt the sting, but you didn't quit. Or you faced a financial setback that forced you to reorganize your priorities. You cut back, restructured, and kept going. Or in your family, you swallowed your own frustration to keep peace, even when you felt misunderstood. Each of these moments trained something inside you: self-control, humility, resilience. Pressure also exposed what could not go with you into the next season. Certain expectations died. Certain dependencies weakened. You stopped relying on external validation to feel steady. You stopped assuming people would show up the way you hoped. This was painful, yes, but it was also freeing. You are less fragile now, less reactive, more grounded. There were days when you questioned yourself. Am I doing something wrong? Did I miss something? Why does it seem harder for me than for others? Those questions were natural, but they were not prophetic. The truth is, the weight you carried matched the capacity you were developing. Not everyone is built for what you are being prepared to hold. Pressure clarified your discernment. You began to sense when something was off without needing evidence. You learned to pause before reacting. You learned to observe patterns instead of isolated moments. These are leadership skills. Even if no one called you a leader yet, this is stewardship training. Even if resources were limited, hope appears here in a very grounded way. You may not feel euphoric, but you feel solid. You trust yourself more. You don't collapse at every inconvenience. You recover faster. You regulate your emotions better. This is strength, quiet strength, the kind that sustains provision when it arrives. The ancient words remind us in the letter of James, chapter 1, verse 12. Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life. Notice the sequence: perseverance comes before reward. Endurance comes before increase. What you stood through qualified you for what is coming next. You are not entering the next phase naive or untested. You are entering it seasoned. Ask yourself this directly: who have you become because of what you survived? Not what did you lose, but what did you gain internally? Perspective, discernment, boundaries, emotional strength. These are not consolation prizes, these are assets. Pressure stripped away urgency that was driven by fear. You no longer rush just to feel safe. You are learning timing. You are learning discernment. You are learning that not every open door is yours to walk through. This will protect you later. There is also mercy in this process. God allowed pressure, but He also limited it. You were stretched, not destroyed. Tested, not abandoned. Even when you felt alone, you were sustained. That sustaining grace is proof that provision was never absent, it was simply working in a different form. You are now standing at a point where the pressure begins to translate into stability. What once felt heavy now feels familiar, and soon it will feel useful. You will recognize the value of what you endured when you see how calmly you handle what overwhelms others. This is not the end of the story. This is the turning of it. The shaping phase is giving way to the positioning phase. And everything you carried will make sense in retrospect. What you are sensing right now is not confusion. It is discernment waking up. This is one of those quiet inner moments that does not announce itself loudly, yet it determines direction for months, sometimes years. Nothing dramatic needs to happen on the outside for this moment to matter. The shift is internal, and it shows up in everyday choices. Inside you, two inner roads are opening. One road is reaction. The other road is alignment. Reaction wants speed. It wants relief. It wants the pressure to stop immediately. Alignment wants clarity. It wants stability. It is willing to tolerate temporary discomfort to avoid long-term regret. Both roads acknowledge emotion, but only one knows where it is going. Your emotions are not wrong. They are information. They tell you when something hurts, when something excites you, when something feels off. But emotions were never meant to drive. They were meant to report. In this season, the lesson is subtle but critical. Listen carefully to your emotions, but do not hand them the steering wheel. Think about a normal moment at work. A message lands wrong. A tone feels dismissive. Instantly, your body reacts: tight chest, racing thoughts, rehearsed responses. Reaction says, respond now, defend yourself, pull back. Alignment slows everything down. Alignment notices the feeling without obeying it. It asks a better question: what response protects my future, not just my pride? Sometimes alignment speaks later. Sometimes it chooses restraint. That pause is not weakness, it is wisdom. Or consider finances. You open an unexpected bill or see a number lower than you hoped. Emotion spikes fast: fear, frustration, urgency. Reaction pushes toward impulsive fixes that feel relieving in the moment but costly later. Alignment lets the discomfort exist without rushing to escape it. You breathe. You look at the full picture. You choose a response that preserves stability instead of deepening stress. This is how provision is protected before it even arrives. In family life, this crossroads appears just as often. Someone disappoints you. A familiar pattern threatens to repeat. Reaction wants silence, sarcasm, or emotional distance. Alignment stays present. It may speak calmly. It may set a boundary. It may choose rest instead of argument. The feeling is acknowledged, but it does not control the outcome. This is the practical work of this season. You are learning the difference between urgency and importance. Urgency is loud, anxious, demanding movement now. Importance is steady, patient, and often quiet. When a real shift is near, urgency increases not because something is wrong, but because the stakes are higher. discernment becomes essential. Here is a simple way alignment begins to form in daily life. When emotion rises, you slow your internal pace. You name what you are feeling instead of being swept away by it. You notice what that feeling is pushing you to do immediately. Then you pause long enough to ask what choice you would still make if the emotion softened. That pause, sometimes only seconds long, changes everything. Another ordinary but powerful situation: the desire to leave something familiar. A job, a role, a routine. Emotion says, "I'm done. Leave now." Alignment asks a deeper question. Is this discomfort signaling completion, or is it strengthening me for the next level? Not every uncomfortable season is meant to be escaped. Some are meant to mature you. Others truly are ending. Wisdom is knowing the difference. And that wisdom only comes when emotion does not rush the decision. Hope enters here in a grounded way. It does not promise instant clarity. It offers steadiness. You begin to trust yourself more. You notice fewer impulsive decisions. You feel calmer even when outcomes are uncertain. This is not passivity, it is control regained. As the apostle reminds us in his letter to the Corinthians, chapter 14, verse 33. For God is not a God of confusion, but of peace. Peace is not the absence of feeling, it is the presence of order. When alignment leads, peace follows even before circumstances change. Ask yourself honestly, without judgment, when pressure rises, do you usually move quickly to escape discomfort, or do you pause long enough to choose wisely? Awareness alone begins to shift behavior. This is not correction, it is refinement. The more you practice alignment, the more natural it becomes. You respond instead of react. You decide instead of panic. You feel deeply without being controlled. Over time, this steadiness becomes part of who you are, and this matters. Because provision requires discernment, opportunity requires emotional maturity, increase requires calm leadership. Before moving forward, anchor this intention in a simple way. Leave a comment with just these words: I choose peace. This is not about visibility. It is a reminder to yourself peace leads. Emotion informs. You are not being rushed. You are being steadied, and that steadiness is preparing you for what comes next. There is an old story that begins not with abundance, but with scarcity. Elijah arrives at Sarepta during a famine, sent to a widow who has almost nothing left. She is not praying for overflow. She is preparing for an ending. A handful of flour, a little oil, one final meal before hope runs out. Then Elijah speaks a strange instruction, not about gathering more, but about order. He asks her to give first, to reorder what little she has, to trust alignment before supply. Nothing multiplies immediately, nothing looks dramatic. But once order is restored, the source opens. The flour does not run out, the oil does not fail. Provision does not arrive as excess, it arrives as consistency. Day after day, enough. This is where your life quietly mirrors that story. You have not been lacking effort. You have not been lacking prayer. What has been shifting is order, the order of your energy, your priorities, your inner agreements. And heaven responds to order faster than it responds to urgency. In everyday life, misalignment rarely looks spiritual. It looks practical. You wake up already tired because rest is always postponed. You say yes too often and wonder why joy feels thin. You keep giving to people, systems and routines that drain you, then question why strength feels scarce. This is not failure. This is misplaced order. Provision does not flow toward exhaustion. Provision flows toward alignment. At work, disorder often hides behind productivity. You respond to everything, all the time. Every message feels urgent. Every demand feels equal. But when order returns, something changes. You stop living from interruption and start living from intention. You protect your best hours. You choose depth over noise. And suddenly, the same effort produces better fruit. In finances, order does not begin with more money. It begins with clarity. You stop avoiding numbers. You stop spending to soothe emotions. You face reality calmly. That alone creates space for provision to breathe. Money responds to stewardship long before it responds to miracles. In family life, order looks like healthy boundaries. You love deeply, but you stop emptying yourself to prove love. You realize that constant sacrifice without replenishment is not devotion. It is slow erosion. When order is restored, relationships stabilize. Peace replaces quiet resentment. The widow at Sarepta did not receive more by chasing more. She received more by placing first things first. The source opened when order returned. That principle has not expired. Here is the hope hidden inside this truth. You do not need more strength to receive provision. You need better placement of the strength you already have. God is not asking you to invent something new. He is asking you to realign what exists. This explains why certain doors stayed closed. It was not rejection. It was protection. If provision had come before order, it would have magnified chaos. Now, you are steadier, more discerning, more capable of sustaining what arrives. The ancient record speaks plainly in the first book of Kings, chapter 17, verse 14. The jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry. Not overflow that overwhelms, not excess that distracts, but steady provision that supports real life. Ask yourself honestly what in your life needs to be reordered before it can be multiplied. Your time, your attention, your trust. This question is not heavy, it is freeing, because order is within reach. Picture your life a few months from now. Not perfect, but stable. Work that no longer drains your soul. Finances handled without panic. Relationships that nourish instead of consume. This is not imagination. This is alignment taking effect. And now, let this moment become more than a private realization. If these words have fed you, treat them like seed, press them gently into the soil by tapping so the ground knows they mattered. If you know someone living on their last handful of strength, carry a portion of this bread to them by sharing it. Some messages are not meant to be stored, but distributed. And if you sense this flow steadying you, remain near the source, subscribe, not out of obligation, but the way one stays close to a well that gives clean water. These are not commands. They are invitations, quiet choices that mirror the lesson itself: order before overflow. Provision is opening not because you demanded it, but because alignment has returned. And like the widow at Sarepta, you are about to discover that enough, sustained over time, changes everything. Separation rarely announces itself as blessing at first. Most of the time, it feels like loss, confusion, or distance you did not ask for. People drift, habits lose their grip. Systems you relied on stop working the way they used to. And you wonder quietly if something is wrong with you. This is not collapse. This is pruning. This is God creating space for what cannot arrive while your hands are full of the old. There is a difference between being abandoned and being detached. Abandonment leaves you empty. Detachment makes room. In this season, God is not removing things to punish you. He is removing them to protect what is coming. Old systems cannot sustain new weight. Old patterns cannot steward new provision. Think about your daily life. Maybe you no longer enjoy conversations that once entertained you. Gossip feels heavy now. Certain routines feel draining instead of comforting. Even scrolling, consuming, or distracting yourself the way you used to no longer satisfies. This is not boredom. This is discernment increasing. At work, you may feel less willing to tolerate environments that compromise your integrity. You notice inefficiencies more clearly. You feel resistance toward politics and unnecessary drama. This does not mean you are difficult. It means your standards are being refined. Separation often begins internally long before it shows up externally. Financially, you may notice a shift as well. Spending that once felt normal now feels reckless. Short-term pleasure no longer justifies long-term stress. You begin thinking in terms of sustainability, not just relief. This is not restriction. This is maturity. In relationships, this process can feel the most uncomfortable. Some connections fade without a clear reason. Others require new boundaries that feel awkward at first. You may feel lonely even while doing the right thing. But loneliness does not always mean you are doing life wrong. Sometimes it means you are transitioning. Here is the hope: separation is not isolation. It is redirection. God does not remove without replacing. But replacement does not arrive until space is made. This is why this stage feels quiet. The noise decreases before the clarity increases. The crowd thins before alignment deepens. Consider a very ordinary moment. You decline an invitation you would have forced yourself to attend before. You choose rest instead of obligation. Or you stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. Nothing dramatic happens, but internally, peace increases. This is separation doing its work. You are being removed from cycles that kept you busy but stagnant, from conversations that drained you, from expectations that were never assigned by God. What feels like loss now will feel like relief later. The danger in this season is misinterpretation. If you interpret separation as rejection, you may chase what God is asking you to release. If you interpret it correctly, you will rest instead of resist. You will allow pruning to do its quiet, precise work. The ancient wisdom speaks clearly in the Gospel of John, chapter 15, verse 2. Every branch that bears fruit he prunes so that it will be even more fruitful. Notice this pruning happens to branches that are already bearing fruit. This is not correction for failure. This is preparation for increase. You are not being cut off. You are being refined. Ask yourself directly, what am I holding on to out of familiarity rather than calling? This question is not meant to pressure you. It is meant to free you. Familiarity can feel safe, but it can also quietly limit growth. Hope looks practical here. It looks like new habits forming naturally. It looks like fewer explanations, fewer arguments, fewer emotional drains. It looks like more energy for what actually matters. You may not see the full picture yet, but you feel lighter. And that matters. As separation continues, you may notice something else. Your intuition sharpens. You sense misalignment faster. You recover quicker from disappointment. You stop romanticizing what God already asked you to leave. This is healing. This is clarity. Provision requires space. New relationships require room. New assignments require focus. God is clearing the field before planting something that needs depth to grow. This stage asks for trust more than action. You are not being asked to burn bridges aggressively. You are being asked to stop crossing bridges God already closed. Letting go gracefully is also obedience. Before moving on, Mark this moment intentionally. If this speaks to you, leave a comment with the number 818, not as superstition, but as a marker signifying release, transition, and new structure forming. Let it remind you that separation is not loss when God is involved. You are not shrinking. You are not falling behind. You are being repositioned. And what comes next will fit the space being made now. What is coming toward you carries weight, not just responsibility, but visibility, not just increase, but expectation. This is why this season is quieter than you imagined. Before anything multiplies outwardly, it must be stabilized inwardly. You are learning how to hold what you once only prayed to receive. Many people ask God for more without realizing that more requires structure. Increase without inner order creates anxiety. Promotion without humility breeds insecurity. Provision without discipline leaks away. This section is about stewardship of self before stewardship of resources. You may already notice the training happening in subtle ways. You are more aware of how quickly your energy drains. You recover more slowly from overextension. You can no longer ignore emotional fatigue and pretend it is spiritual strength. This is not weakness. This is wisdom forming. Think about work again. You may be trusted with more tasks, more influence, more decision-making even without a formal title yet. And you are noticing something: not every task deserves the same level of emotional investment. You are learning to prioritize, to delegate mentally, to stay calm under pressure. This is leadership training, whether anyone calls it that or not. In finances, holding increase begins long before the numbers change. It begins with restraint, with patience, with the ability to say no to things that offer excitement but steal stability. You are learning that peace is more valuable than appearances. That consistency beats sudden gain. That wisdom protects provision better than luck ever could. At home and in relationships, this training shows up as emotional regulation. You feel deeply, but you no longer spiral as easily. You can sit with discomfort without needing immediate resolution. You are learning to listen without absorbing everything. This is not detachment, it is maturity. One of the hardest lessons in this stage is realizing that not everyone who celebrates your breakthrough will be able to stay close to you in the next season. Not because they are bad, but because growth changes dynamics. Holding increase requires boundaries. Boundaries protect both you and what God entrusts to you. There is also humility being formed here. Not the kind that thinks less of itself, but the kind that stays teachable. You are becoming less reactive to praise and less devastated by criticism. Your identity is stabilizing. This matters because increase amplifies whatever is already inside. God is steadying you so increase does not distort you. You might feel moments of fear surface unexpectedly. Thoughts like, what if I mess this up, or what if I can't maintain what's coming? These thoughts are not prophecies. They are signals that responsibility is increasing. Courage here does not mean pretending you are not afraid. It means choosing faith-informed discipline over fear-driven control. Hope looks very grounded in this stage. It looks like routines forming naturally. Better sleep, clearer thinking, healthier rhythms. You are not chasing balance, you are building it. This is how you prepare to carry more without breaking. The ancient wisdom speaks directly to this season in the book of Luke, chapter 16, verse 10. Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. Trust is built quietly, in unseen decisions, in moments when no one is applauding. You are being trusted now, tested not with abundance, but with consistency. How you handle today is shaping what you will be handed tomorrow. Ask yourself this gently: if increase arrived suddenly, Would my inner life support it? This is not a question meant to intimidate you. It is meant to align you, because God's goal is not just to bless you, but to keep you whole while doing so. You are learning when to rest without guilt, when to say no without explanation, when to wait without anxiety. These are not delayed, these are reinforcements. There is a quiet confidence forming in you, not loud, not showy, but stable. You trust your judgment more. You second-guess yourself less. You are not rushed by other people's timelines. This steadiness is rare and it is necessary for what comes next. You are not just receiving a new season. You are becoming someone who can sustain it. What you will carry soon requires patience, humility, clarity, and restraint. None of these are learned in moments of overflow. They are learned now here, in the in-between. And because you are learning them, what is coming will not crush you. It will settle into your life with peace. There comes a moment when preparation quietly turns into movement. Not announced, not rushed, just a deep inner recognition that you are no longer standing where you once stood. The landscape may look familiar, the same work, the same home, the same rhythm of days, but something essential has shifted beneath your feet. You are no longer waiting for permission. You are walking as someone already sent. This is what it means to be marked. Being marked does not mean life suddenly becomes easy. It means life becomes clearer. You hesitate less. You explain yourself less. Your decisions no longer circle endlessly in doubt. You sense when to move and when to remain still. You stop bargaining with what you already know to be true. In ordinary life, this shows up in subtle ways. At work, you are no longer driven by the hunger to be noticed. You do your work with care, then you release the outcome. You do not absorb every opinion in the room. You contribute without striving. And strangely, this steadiness carries more authority than force ever did. In finances, you stop waiting for a dramatic breakthrough to feel secure. You begin to act wisely with what is already in your hands. You plan without fear. You give without depletion. You save without anxiety. Provision becomes something you steward, not something you chase. Peace replaces urgency. In family and relationships, you show up whole. You love without losing yourself. You listen without carrying what is not yours. You stop rescuing people from lessons they must learn on their own. This is not distance. This is respect. And respect creates healthier connection. This is what being sent looks like in real life. It is not a platform. It is a posture. You were never meant to stand out by becoming louder. You were meant to stand firm by becoming steadier. The world is overflowing with urgency. It is starving for grounded people, people whose presence lowers chaos instead of amplifying it. You are becoming one of them. There will still be moments of uncertainty. That does not disqualify you. Sent people are not fearless. They are faithful. They move forward without having every answer, trusting that clarity meets obedience along the way. As Jesus himself declared in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, verse 14, "You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden." Light does not argue for relevance. It does not force attention. It simply exists. And in existing, it reveals what was already there. You are not being asked to shine harder only to stop dimming yourself to preserve comfort. Hope now feels tangible. It looks like momentum not rushed, but steady. Doors open without pressure. Conversations align without manipulation. You find yourself in the right places at the right times, not because you engineered it, but because alignment has become your language. You are no longer asking, "Am I ready?" You are asking, "Am I willing?" And you are? There is something deeply human and deeply sacred about choosing to stay connected to what nourishes you. Not because you are told to, but because you recognize the taste of clean water when you drink it. When something steadies you, you linger. When a path brings clarity, you keep walking it. Keep. If these words have warmed you, let them leave a footprint like pressing your hand into wet clay, a quiet sign that this moment mattered. If you sense someone else still wandering in uncertainty, open the gate gently and let them walk this road too. Some light is meant to travel, and if you feel drawn to remain near this current of clarity, stay close, the way one chooses to live near a well, not out of obligation, but because life flows there. And before this closes, there is one more quiet invitation. If something in you has been nodding along from the beginning, leave a short line below, not to explain yourself, but like placing a small stone on an altar, saying, "I was here. This spoke to me." Your words do not need to be many. Even a sentence becomes a marker, a witness to your own becoming. Pause now and ask yourself one final, honest question. Who are you becoming? Not what are you achieving, but who is being formed beneath it all? The answer matters, because very soon, your life will begin to reflect it more clearly than ever. You are no longer drifting. You are no longer guessing. You are moving, marked, steady, sent. The shift you prepared for is no longer ahead of you. You are walking in it now. You do not need to rush away from this moment. Let it settle. Some words are meant to pass through quickly. Others are meant to stay behind like quiet echoes. Only you can tell which parts were for you. If this message felt useful, nourishing, or steadying, you are free to let it travel. Sometimes sharing is simply an act of care, placing a lamp where someone else might find their footing. And if you sense that someone you love is standing in a season of waiting or transition, offering them this path may be enough. Not to convince, just to accompany. But if sharing does not feel right, that is also okay. You do not owe this message anything. You are allowed to keep what touched you and release the rest. You are allowed to take one sentence, one image, one quiet realization, and carry it forward without explanation. Some truths are not meant to be displayed. They are meant to be lived. Maybe something here reminded you to slow down. Maybe it helped you name a shift you could already feel. Maybe it simply gave you permission to rest, or to trust, or to let go of something that has been heavy for too long. That is enough. Growth does not always look like action. Sometimes it looks like recognition. Sometimes it looks like peace returning where pressure used to live. Sometimes it looks like doing nothing differently on the outside, while everything quietly rearranges on the inside. There is no dramatic ending here on purpose. Life does not usually change with a full stop. It changes with a comma, a pause, a breath before the next sentence begins. So take what is yours, leave what is not, walk gently back into your day. And if nothing else, remember this: you are allowed to move at the pace of clarity, not urgency.